Imagine being trapped in a metal box at 1:30 in the morning. You are miles from help, entirely surrounded by dense fog and driving rain, rolling down a deserted highway. It is a primal scenario that immediately triggers our instinct for self-preservation. This is the exact environment we enter in the psychological thriller The Last Passenger. At the wheel is Rohan, an exhausted night shift cab driver pushing through his fatigue. But the tension spikes when a stranger named Samir flags him down on the side of the road and slides into the back seat. The filmmaker immediately feeds us specific, troubling details about this new arrival. Samir wears a dark, heavy hoodie. He is frantically checking his phone, repeatedly looking over his shoulder, and his hands are trembling uncontrollably. By combining severe weather, extreme isolation, and a highly erratic passenger, the director expertly primes our expectations. We instinctively prepare ourselves for a standard survival thriller where an innocent driver has to outwit a dangerous predator. To solidify this assumption, a sudden radio bulletin breaks the silence in the cab. A local businessman has just been murdered, and the suspect, described as mentally unstable and wearing a black hoodie, is on the loose and likely looking for a ride. The camera cuts to the rearview mirror. Samir's stark hoodie is now glaringly obvious. When he leans forward with a strange smile and demands the driver hurry up because someone is chasing him, his guilt seems unquestionable. Rohan realizes the danger and subtly reaches for his phone to dial the police, only to find the network signal is completely dead. The trap closes, leaving him entirely alone with a suspected psychopath. At this exact point in the runtime, our brains have locked onto a rigid narrative track. We are absolutely certain we know exactly how this midnight drive will end, completely unaware that the director is actively steering us into a psychological ditch. The cab eventually reaches its destination at an old highway bridge, but a road closed sign blocks the path, forcing Rohan to park in absolute, suffocating darkness. The cinematic tension hits its absolute peak. Suddenly, Samir leans forward and plunges his hand aggressively into his hoodie pocket. Every thriller trope we have ever consumed tells us he is about to pull out a knife or a gun to finish the job. But he doesn't draw a weapon. Instead, he pulls out a crumpled newspaper and a photograph, holding it up to the driver. The photograph shows the murdered businessman shaking hands with his killer, and the killer in the photo is Rohan, the driver. Samir is an undercover detective who has been tracking him this entire time. The introduction of a single piece of paper shatters the entire reality the film spent 5 minutes building. In a fraction of a second, the roles of predator and prey are completely inverted. To understand how we fell for this, we have to look at a psychological trick known as cinematic confirmation bias. Take a look at this flowchart illustrating the black hoodie trap. We hear a radio broadcast about a killer in a hoodie, and our brains immediately bypass any logical filtering. We link that audio cue directly to the only character on screen wearing one, ignoring how statistically common that clothing actually is. We do the exact same thing with Samir's trembling hands. We incorrectly sort that behavior into a bucket labeled guilt, assuming they are psychopathic jitters. In reality, they belonged in a bucket for fear. It was the physical terror of a detective realizing he is locked in a moving car with a cold-blooded murderer. The trick is effective because human brains prioritize rapid pattern recognition over objective analysis. When we are exposed to perceived stress and highly familiar movie tropes, we stop analyzing the facts and start jumping to the most obvious conclusion. Back inside the cab, the immediate aftermath of this reveal is terrifying. The fearful, exhausted facade drops from Rohan's face, replaced instantly by a cold, calculated smile. He calmly reaches over and activates the car's child locks, trapping the detective inside. Then he reaches under his seat and pulls out a heavy, blood-stained iron wrench. The film smartly cuts away from the actual execution. Instead, we are left outside in the total darkness, watching the heavy rain lash against the stationary silhouette of the car as the detective's final cries are swallowed by the storm. The brilliance of the misdirection is cemented in the final frames. Rohan exits the vehicle, retrieves his own hidden black hoodie from under the seat, puts it on, and silently dumps the detective's body into the river below. This final sequence perfectly completes the story's thematic transition. The relatable, everyday working man we inherently trusted has been fully unmasked as the definitive monster. The Last Passenger succeeds because it uses our own cinematic conditioning as a weapon against us. It relies entirely on our habit of jumping to the most obvious conclusions. It forces us to confront the artificial Hollywood idea of a highly suspicious stranger against the much more terrifying reality of a deeply mundane, everyday individual. Ultimately, it proves that our perception is inherently flawed. When we rely on surface-level context clues to stereotype threats, we leave ourselves entirely vulnerable to the real predators who know exactly how to hide quietly in plain sight.